Hey there, I hope you enjoyed your weekend and that, as always, your week is off to a great start. This is a check-in. It's a little longer this week because you have several assignments that are due and the content is really important. So bear with me and stick around to the end. This week is really important. And so we are looking at access. We're also exploring the tension between inclusion and access. Last week we talked about the principles of disability justice as authored and identified by Patty Byrne and the Sins Invalid group. And so this is where, for us as students navigating through this content, maybe who have previously unintentionally subscribed to a medical model of disability, can really learn. So you've learned last week about the principles of disability justice. This week we'll learn how to navigate through the tension of inclusion, which has been for years now the North Star, which is typically identified by the non-disabled community. So even thinking about Miami University, the North Star is inclusion and diversity. Where it meets in a place of tension is with the disabled community who says, no, that's not our North Star. Access is our North Star. And so we're going to, for those of you trying to figure out your own identity and how you're going to take this content that you've learned this semester and apply it, I hope that you really take to heart this content around access and how you can navigate that tension, but transition from working toward inclusion to working toward true access. There's a piece that you'll read this week that I authored with one of my students where I'm complicit in that sort of North Star for inclusion. I taught middle school for many years and was constantly taught in my educational experiences that we need to provide inclusive experiences for our students. It wasn't until I started to navigate in the field of disability studies that I learned I was doing many things, most things wrong, but that the true North Star rather is access. And so there's a difference. If we think about inclusion being invited to the table, you'll read in the article by David Mordstadt that the message is very clear with inclusion of this is our group, but we'll let you in. And so in inclusion, if we're being invited to the table, if we think about true access, it is building the table together. So let's take a look at what we are going to explore this week. So I would like for you to read this David Mordstadt piece that I mentioned, The Tension of Inclusion. I would love for you, as you read this piece, to think about this transition that we've had as a society for inclusion. He uses this visual, and you may have seen this before, where he talks about traditionally people with disabilities have been excluded, then they were segregated, more recently integrated, and then the push in the last 10 years has been for inclusion. And so in this piece, he's problematizing inclusion with this strong message that says, you know, this is our group, but we'll let you in. He also speaks to this surrender by the group who is the majority. There's a scholar who I really admire. Her name is Grace Lee Boggs. She's a Black woman activist scholar who says, you know, for true change to happen, the group in power, the majority power has to be willing, the group in power has to be willing to surrender or give up some of that power. And he's speaking to this here. And so in his piece, he says we'll kind of sit with this tension of inclusion, but we're going to expand this further by talking about access. And so I'd like for you to learn and read about the Access is Love movement. This is a increasingly popular movement developed by three women. Mia Mingus, you'll watch her keynote address at the International Disability Summit from 2018. This is Alice Wong. She has a podcast and a website called the Disability Visibility Project, and Sandy Ho. So these three women are disability studies scholar activists. And after Mia Mingus's keynote, where she talks about disability justice is just another term for love, these three coined this hashtag and this movement around access is love. And so there's a video here describing the movement. I'd like for you to start to explore, watch this video here and explore this list of readings and resources. You don't have to read everything in that list. I'd like for you to pull it up and identify something that speaks to you. We do have posted, though, to our weekly module ways that you can start creating and expanding access. And then, as I mentioned, this Mia Mingus keynote here, I'd like for you to watch that in its entirety. I have a piece here that as I mentioned, I co-authored with a student of mine. And so she's a student, excuse me, who, he's barking at the book. Hold on. A book fell off the bookshelf, and now he's been barking at the bookshelf today. And so in this piece, I am a former special education teacher who admits to many faults as I've learned from a disability studies lens about my educational practices. And Courtney, who co-authors the piece with me, is a student who has navigated through special education services throughout her academic career. And so together we sort of interrogate and talk through some of the challenges that we experienced in public education. And we talk about and sit with this tension that we're talking about with inclusion, and we talk about access and disability justice. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and reflections on that piece. All right, so this week, as usual, you have your engagement reflection. I would like for you to start to think about how you're positioning yourself having learned this content. So many of you are doing a 3-2-1. I'd like for you to take some time to maybe expand that 3-2-1 to think about what you're going to do. All right, this guy. So I'd like for you to, in your engagement reflection, really work through how this impacts you personally and professionally. This will also help you with your fourth application assignment that's coming up next week. All right, then you have your book reflection project. You'll submit that by Sunday as well. You have two options here. So you finished last week My Body Politic. So you have two options. You can do a reflection paper. This is a traditional paper, 5 pages, double-spaced. I have here what I'm looking for within those 5 pages. I'd like for you to summarize the book. I'd like for you to pick out one salient experience or person that Simi encounters, and I'd like for you to describe how that's impacted you in some personal and philosophical way that applies to your life and your future career. And then I want for you to take a little time in this paper to describe how Simi's memoir will apply to your future career, how it connects. And you have a rubric here to help you with the paper. This is a class that's intended to be universally designed. We've talked at length about universal design this term. So I want to give you an opportunity to expand from the traditional paper and try something maybe creative or more open-ended. So an example could be a Prezi or presentation that you put together, and you could put it to a video or a voiceover. You could even come present that at my office hours. All right, so if you do this more open-ended reflective project, I just want for you to include this same type of content in your reflection.